A ghost hunting trip to Eastern State Penitentiary turned into a terrifying nightmare. Lucas and his 3 friends went in for fun. Only one came out. Whispers in the dark, shifting shadows, and a creature with a familiar face haunted them. One friend vanished forever. What they encountered wasn't just paranormal, it was something no one was meant to survive. My name is Lucas, and this is not the kind of story you tell for thrills or attention. I've held this inside me for years, and even now as I write it down, I can still hear the echo of footsteps that weren't ours, in a place where no one should have been walking. It was late October when it happened, the perfect season for ghost stories, and my friends had the perfect idea: a night exploration of the Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia. It's one of the most notorious abandoned prisons in America. We weren't exactly ghost hunters, just 4 friends looking for something thrilling, something unforgettable. Well, we got exactly what we asked for. There was me, Lucas, the one with a cautious mind but a weak spot for dares. Then there was Brandon, always the loud one, always joking to cover his nerves. Kevin, quiet and thoughtful, our planner. And Dylan. Dylan was the brave one, the kind who volunteered to go first, who laughed at ghost stories, and who, I'd soon learn, hid his fear deeper than the rest of us. The plan was simple. We'd arrive around dusk, sneak in through a loose fence panel Kevin had found on a forum, and record our journey for a makeshift documentary we were putting together for Halloween. We brought flashlights, extra batteries, a handheld camera, and just enough confidence to get us in trouble. As we drove into Philadelphia, the sky began to change. The city's skyline slowly gave way to older, more forgotten parts of town. When we finally turned the corner and Eastern State came into view, none of us spoke for a moment. There it was, towering, grey, broken by time. Its Gothic stone walls stood tall and intimidating, stained by history and weather. Ivy crawled over rusted gates. Barbed wire dangled like forgotten warnings. And despite the city around it, it felt like the prison existed outside of time. Brandon laughed awkwardly. Well, here it is. The Great Eastern State. Who's ready to meet some ghosts? Nobody answered. We parked nearby and gathered our gear. The air was colder now, and I remember the feeling of the wind slipping through the cracked stone like the breath of something unseen. My fingers were numb as I adjusted the flashlight strap. The hole in the fence was exactly where Kevin had said. We slipped in, one by one, until we were inside the outer yard. The silence hit us like a wall. Even the street noise had vanished, muffled by the massive stone structure. We stood in front of the main entrance for a while, unsure of what to say. Dylan broke the tension. Let's get this over with before the cops show up. He pushed open the heavy iron door that led into the central corridor, and we stepped into darkness. The air changed instantly, stale, heavy, cold. It smelled like mold and rust, but something else too, something older. The flashlight beams danced across the crumbling walls, exposing rusted bars, peeling paint, and long-forgotten cells. The halls were curved in a spoke-like pattern, a design meant to isolate inmates and keep order. But now, it just disoriented us. Kevin turned on the camera, his red light blinking. "Okay, say your name and why you're here," he said jokingly. "Lucas," I said flatly. "Here because I made a dumb bet." "Brandon, here for the ghosts and the glory." "Kevin, here for the footage." "Dylan," he said, giving a wink to the camera, "here to laugh in the face of fear." I wish I could say I laughed then, but I didn't. Something about the way the building seemed to breathe unsettled me. It was like the walls held memories. Not just of violence or sorrow, but something much more twisted. As we explored, we passed through crumbling cell blocks, each more decayed than the last. Our lights flickered occasionally, but we brushed it off. The deeper we went, the more it felt like the building wanted to keep us inside. We found an old isolation wing. Cell block 14, I think it was. Kevin said inmates here were kept in complete silence for months. No visitors, no voices. Some of them reportedly lost their minds in there. We hesitated, but Dylan was already stepping inside. His voice echoed weirdly in the block. "Can you imagine spending years in here? Just you and your thoughts?" That's when we heard it, a faint sound like a footstep behind us. But when we turned, no one was there. "Did you hear that?" I asked. "Probably the building settling," Kevin replied. But even he didn't sound convinced. We pressed on, filming more rooms, whispering nervously, trying to laugh it off. But that sound came again, louder this time, not one footstep, but many. Still, there was no one behind us. We decided to set up for a short break. Dylan wanted to go off to explore one of the closed-off corridors alone for bonus footage. We argued, but he insisted. He was always like that, curious and bold. He walked away into the dark hallway while we waited, reviewing some footage by the old guard station. That was the last time we saw Dylan, at least the last time we saw that version of him, and we hadn't even realised what we had awakened yet. It had been nearly 15 minutes since Dylan disappeared down the corridor. At first, none of us worried too much. He was always the daredevil. He'd gone off alone during past trips before, urban explorations, abandoned buildings, you name it. He loved being the first to find something weird. But here, this place felt different. We waited in the old guard station, our backs against the peeling walls, a faint beam of moonlight sneaking in through a cracked window. Kevin was reviewing some footage on the camera while Brandon scrolled through his phone, though there was barely any signal inside the penitentiary. I remember staring down the dark corridor Dylan had vanished into, just staring like I was trying to see through the shadows. That's when the sound started again, faint deliberate footsteps echoing down the hall. This time, slower, heavier. "Dylan?" I called out. No answer. Brandon stood, frowning. "You heard that too, right?" Kevin nodded. "He's messing with us." "Maybe," I muttered, but my gut told me otherwise. We turned on our flashlights and headed down the same corridor, calling Dylan's name every few steps. The hallway narrowed and darkened, the walls seeming to close in. The air got colder, much colder. Our breaths became visible like we'd stepped into a freezer. That made no sense. It wasn't even that cold outside. "Lucas," Kevin whispered, tugging my sleeve. "Look." He pointed to the right side of the corridor, where one of the cell doors stood slightly ajar. It wasn't like the others, it was cleaner, newer, almost untouched by time, which made no sense. The rest of the penitentiary was in ruins. I approached it slowly, my flashlight trembling in my hand. As I pushed the door open, it creaked like it hadn't moved in decades. Inside was a narrow room with a single metal bed, and on it, a pile of old shredded clothing. At first that didn't seem strange until I realised it was the exact outfit Dylan had been wearing earlier. "Is this a prank?" Brandon muttered, picking up the torn hoodie. "Is he trying to freak us out?" Kevin swallowed hard. "That's not funny. That's not something Dylan would do." Then we all heard it, a deep echoing breath, like someone exhaling just inches from us. Not from the hallway, from the room, from right behind me. I spun around, nothing, and yet I felt something, a presence watching, waiting. "We need to go," I said, backing away. "Now." We rushed back to the central corridor, our nerves frayed, trying to keep calm. But as soon as we arrived, the door we had entered through was gone. Not just closed, gone. In its place was a stone wall, unbroken, like it had never been a doorway. Kevin slammed his hand against it. No way, we came in through here, it was open." "Maybe we got turned around," Brandon said, clearly trying to stay logical, even as his voice cracked. "Number, this is the main block." "I remember that mural," I said, pointing to a faded figure on the opposite wall, a crumbling painting of an eye watching over the cell block. It hadn't moved. We hadn't moved. The building had changed. That's when the lights began to flicker, not ours, but the ones overhead. They buzzed to life, humming with old electricity, casting a sterile glow down the hall. The prison was abandoned. The power should have been dead. Brandon laughed nervously. "Okay, I get it. Dylan found the switch. Real funny, man." But deep down, none of us believed that. We started walking again, trying to retrace our steps, but every turn led to a hallway we didn't remember. Cell blocks we hadn't passed through. The layout no longer matched anything we'd seen earlier. It was as if the prison was shifting, subtly but deliberately. Then we came to another hallway, one we knew we hadn't entered before. It was cleaner, lit by flickering bulbs. The doors were all closed and each one had a number carved into the metal, but backwards, as if the numbers were written from the inside. And down that hallway at the very end stood Dylan, or at least something that looked like him. He was facing away from us, standing perfectly still, as though frozen in time. "Dylan?" Kevin whispered. No response. "Dylan!" I called louder, still nothing. We approached slowly. Brandon, suddenly braver, jogged ahead and reached out to touch his shoulder. The figure turned. It wasn't Dylan. The face was almost his, but distorted. Wrong. The eyes were too wide. The skin looked stretched, pale like wax. Its mouth curled unnaturally as if it was trying to mimic a smile it didn't understand. Then it blinked and the lights went out. Total darkness. We screamed. Not because of the dark, but because we heard it move. Fast. Skittering. Not footsteps, but like something crawling across stone, circling us. The lights returned just as quickly and the figure was gone. So was Brandon. "Brandon!" Kevin shouted. We spun in every direction. Empty hallway, empty cells. Nothing. Only the soft sound of something dragging across the floor. We were 3 now, and this was no longer an exploration. This was a trap. The silence after Brandon vanished was worse than any scream. Kevin and I stood frozen, bathed in the sterile glow of flickering prison lights, staring at the spot where he had just been. Gone in an instant. No sound of struggle, no warning, no trace. Just gone. My heart pounded so loudly it drowned out every rational thought. I looked to Kevin. His face was pale, his mouth slightly open, his eyes locked on the hallway like he was trying to will Brandon back into existence. "We have to find him," he whispered. I wanted to say something, anything, but all I managed was a nod. What other choice did we have? We moved cautiously now. Every footstep was a risk. The air had changed again, denser, harder to breathe. The temperature dropped further with every turn we took. I began to notice patterns that shouldn't have been there. The same mural on the wall repeating 3 times in different corridors. A cracked window that reappeared even though we'd walked 2 floors down. The more we tried to navigate, the more the prison rearranged itself. "Lucas," Kevin murmured, pointing to a door marked C13. That's where we entered earlier, but it was on the first floor, not down here. I opened it. Inside, the room was pitch black. My flashlight refused to turn on. Kevin's camera, which had been recording everything, now displayed static. Then the static turned into whispers, not in English, not in any language I recognized. Low, guttural, wet sounds. They grew louder, overlapping until it felt like the air around us was buzzing with voices. I slammed the door shut. "No more doors," I said through gritted teeth. "We need to get to the control tower. If we can get high enough, maybe we'll see a way out." Kevin didn't argue. He was shaking. So was I. We followed what looked like the old access stairwell. Each step creaked under our weight. Halfway up, Kevin slipped, his foot going through a rotting plank. He caught himself, but barely. The fall could have been fatal. Below us, in the darkness of the stairwell, I saw something looking up. No light reached it, but I saw the glint of 2 eyes. When we reached the top floor, the architecture no longer matched anything from the blueprints we'd studied before coming here. The hallway was narrow, made of old brick and rusted bars, but something was wrong. There were cells lining the wall, too many for the size of the building. Rows and rows of cells going further than physics should allow. Each had something inside. I didn't want to look, but I did. I wish I hadn't. Some were empty, some held mannequins, or so I thought, until one of them blinked. Another one breathed. One more turned its head slowly as we passed, the motion jerky, unnatural. All were dressed in outdated prisoner uniforms. Their mouths were open in silent screams. "Keep moving," I told Kevin. My own voice didn't sound like mine anymore. That's when we found Dylan's phone, lying in the middle of the corridor. The screen was cracked, but still on. The flashlight had died, but the camera app was open, still recording. Kevin picked it up, pressed play. What we saw chilled us. The footage showed Dylan walking alone, muttering to himself, making jokes. Then the audio started glitching. The hallway around him seemed to shift as though the walls were breathing. At one point, the lights flickered and a figure appeared behind him. Tall, skeletal, with elongated arms and a distorted face like someone wearing a mask that was too tight. Dylan turned, saw it, screamed. And the video cut to black. That thing, we hadn't seen it with our own eyes yet, but we'd felt it. And maybe we'd heard it. Kevin dropped the phone. "I think it's watching us," he whispered. "Not watching," I said, "playing." We kept moving deeper into the heart of the penitentiary, but the deeper we went, the more reality bent around us. Hallways that led in circles, lights that illuminated nothing. At one point, we passed a mirror hanging from the wall. There was just one problem. We weren't reflected. We stared into it, but the glass showed only an empty hallway behind us. No people, no movement. Kevin raised his hand and nothing happened in the mirror. "We're not here," he said under his breath. But before I could respond, we heard Brandon. A scream. His voice. It echoed from below us, through the very floor like it came from the core of the building. "Help, Kevin, Lucas, please." Then a wet cracking sound. Silence. Kevin turned to me. "We need to go down." "No," I said. "That's exactly what it wants." "But it's Brandon." "Is it?" The doubt in my voice scared both of us, and then we heard it. Not a scream, not footsteps, breathing, right behind us. We turned in perfect unison, flashlights raised, and the figure was there. The same distorted version of Dylan we'd seen earlier, standing still, face blank. And this time, it spoke, but it used Brandon's voice. "Guys, help me." The words were slurred, wrong, like someone trying to imitate a memory. Then it stepped into the shadows and vanished. We were two now, and the penitentiary was far from finished. We didn't speak for a long time after that thing vanished. The air felt heavier, and with every breath it was like the prison was pulling us deeper into itself. I looked at Kevin. His eyes darted wildly, sweat pouring down his face, lips trembling. "We're leaving," I said. "Now." Kevin hesitated, torn between reason and the thin, desperate hope that we could still find Brandon. But deep down, I think we both knew whatever had spoken to us earlier wasn't him. As we retraced our steps, the layout of the prison warped again. No hallway was familiar. Doors we'd opened were now walls. Stairs turned into slopes. We walked through one corridor that seemed to pulse. Yes, pulse, as if the entire building was a breathing organism. And in that moment, I understood something horrifying. We weren't lost. We were trapped on purpose. Then we heard it again. Footsteps, but not ours. They were heavy, slow, deliberate. Kevin grabbed my arm, pulling me into an old utility closet. We pressed ourselves against the cold stone wall, breath held, the footsteps growing closer, then stopping just outside the door. I held my breath so long my lungs burned. Then, a knock, 3 slow taps. Kevin covered his mouth, eyes wide, and then a voice. Brandon's voice. "Lucas." "Kevin, it's okay now. I found a way out." My blood turned to ice. He sounded calm, too calm, like he was reading a line. And then the voice changed. It stuttered, glitched, repeated the same sentence in a loop like a broken recording. "I found a way out, I found a way out, I found a way." Then silence. We waited, then slowly opened the door. No one there, but on the opposite wall, written in what looked like soot or ash, was a message. "Some escape, others become." "Become what?" Kevin whispered. Neither of us wanted the answer. We ran. No more caution, no more plans. We just ran. Down halls that stretched for too long, through doorways that led to nowhere, past shadows that didn't belong to us. Then we saw it. The figure again, standing at the far end of a long hallway. Same distorted body, same pale, mask-like face. But now, it was Brandon. Or, it looked like him. Same hoodie, same sneakers, same small mole above the right eyebrow. But the eyes, they weren't his. They were black, empty, reflective like water at night. He smiled and then moved. Not walked. Glided, fast, silent. Kevin screamed and bolted left. I followed, barely dodging rusted pipes and debris. Whatever it was behind us didn't follow in a straight line. It appeared again, closer, then again, just behind Kevin. And then Kevin tripped. "Get up!" I shouted, but it was too late. The figure was on him. And then, in a split second I will never forget, it merged with him. No scream, just a flicker of light, like static, and both were gone. Vanished. The hallway was empty, and I was alone. I staggered backwards, disoriented, choking on the dust and terror. My flashlight flickered, then died. Darkness swallowed me. I didn't move for a full minute. Then, somewhere to my left, I saw light. Diamond soils, flickering, from above, maybe the tower. I moved toward it, my body running on fear and adrenaline. I climbed stairs 2 at a time, turned a corner, and found myself in the main rotunda. Somehow, I had been brought back. The original entrance stood before me, chained and padlocked, but the gates were now open, wide open, as if inviting me to leave. I didn't hesitate. I ran. Didn't look back. Didn't try to understand. Only when I crossed the threshold did I realize I hadn't heard a sound behind me, just silence, cold and eternal. I was found wandering the parking lot by a night security guard. I must have looked insane, covered in dust, eyes bloodshot, hands trembling. I told him my friends were inside. He called the police. They searched the entire prison. No sign of Kevin, no sign of Brandon, only our gear, camera, broken phone, flashlight, and the final recording. A static-filled clip showing the rotunda. In the center, a figure stood motionless, facing the wall, wearing Brandon's hoodie, and when it slowly turned to the camera, it wasn't Brandon's face, it was mine. It's been 2 years since that night. 2 years since I stepped out of the Eastern State Penitentiary and never looked back. Physically at least. Mentally, I'm still there. Every single night. The police never found Kevin or Brandon. Their names were added to a cold case file. I gave my full statement, truthfully at first, but as I described the events, I could see the looks change, disbelief, doubt, pity. Eventually, I stopped trying. I told the official version. We got separated. I panicked. I ran. End of story. But you know the truth now, and I need someone to know. I moved away from Philadelphia, far away. Changed jobs, changed numbers, but no matter how far I go, that place follows me. Sometimes it's in dreams, sometimes it's in reflections. I'll see Kevin's face in a crowd just for a second. I'll hear Brandon calling my name through the wind when I walk alone. The worst part, sometimes, I hear my own voice in places I know I've never spoken. One night, while reviewing an old audio file on my computer, one I hadn't touched in years, I heard something I never recorded. My voice, calm, cold, saying, I found a way out. That's the phrase the thing used in the prison, over and over, looping like broken tape. And I wonder, did I really escape, or did something else leave in my place? I've thought about going back, facing it, maybe even trying to find them. But something deep inside me warns that if I ever step foot in that place again, I won't be the one who walks out. So I live quietly now. I write, I work, I avoid late night walks, but I carry a guilt that never fades, because I made a choice that night to run. And in doing so, I left them behind. And sometimes, in the middle of the night, I'll wake up certain, absolutely certain that someone is standing in the corner of my room, watching, waiting. One night I turned on my phone flashlight to see. No one was there. But on the wall, drawn faintly in dust, were 5 words I hoped I'd never see again. Some escape, others become. I wiped it clean, but I know it'll be back. So if you're watching this, if you're listening to my story for thrills, remember this. That prison isn't just haunted, it's hungry. And the next time you think about stepping inside just for fun, ask yourself, are you sure you'll be the one who leaves? Because Eastern State Penitentiary doesn't forget, it waits.